my great pleasure to introduce you to Courtney, who indirectly you have to blame for all of this. So Chris has been what we call the Challenge Director for the Made Smarter Innovation Challenge. And he has put together a £147 million programme of a wide variety of different investments, of which one was InterAct. So, Chris.
Thank you, Jan. I don't need a clicker. I'll go.
No, but I need to click it, and it seems that if you stand here, then the clicker works, and you can look at the
I can look at my own picture. Tremendous news. That's great news. So I was partly inspired by that, but I wanted to give you a little bit of my personal perspective. One of the strap lines for this piece of work is about creating the future we want. And if I take a manufacturing perspective and share my own, if you think forward, let's say 15 years, what do you want manufacturing to look like, and what impact do you want it to have on the UK economy? Clearly, that's going to be driven a lot by the transition to net zero. And you see it across all sectors, all stages of production. The imperative around that, sustainability, is a massive agenda item for manufacturing as it is across society. The second part is really dealing with resilience and disruptions. If you just take the last 2 years in microcosm, so in the time that I've been in this particular role, we've had wars and pandemics, we had Brexit and all the rest. If you think of the number of disruptions we've had to manufacturing supply chains, and my position would be is that will continue, and we have to be able to thrive within that kind of environment. Third item is really about, builds on the previous point about how can we embrace innovation, how do we accelerate technological innovation and adoption across manufacturing, how can we be a leader in that? So if you look at those kind of three combined forces and try to think about what does that future really look like and how do you get there, there's no doubt in my view that it's going to be underpinned by taking what I would call a systems approach or a collaborative approach, transdisciplinary for some other people who prefer that way of looking at it, and really underpinned by people and skills and having a very sort of people first agenda. So that's what I think we need to try and get to. If you look at net zero, when I think about it, sometimes I can feel mildly overwhelmed. If I look across all manufacturing sectors and all stages of it, and try to think about all those supply chains in themselves becoming net zero-wise, in inverted commas, it's different use of materials. There's much more reuse of materials in food, in pharmaceuticals, in airplanes and automotive. If I think now about the disruptions in automotive, I was thinking about 15 years ago, Tesla hadn't made anything. So what are the cars and vehicles we're going to be making in 15 years? What does that look like? In aerospace, the sector that I spent the early part of my career in, what fuels, what planes, what modes of transport are we going to be using? It's entirely uncertain, I think. There's lots of people who think they know the answer, but I don't think any of us really do in terms of how that's changing and transforming. Even in pharmaceuticals, so the last couple of weeks we've been in pharmaceutical companies and they're starting to talk very heavily about sustainability. Obviously their kind of raison d'etre is really about the health of people. They're trying to keep people alive and healthy. But even they're starting to talk much more about sustainability. How do they sustainably find the right source material, use it more effectively to try and create the drugs and the products that we need in future for healthy living? Food too. I mean, I've been marveled at the resilience of the food supply chain. As a non-food supply chain expert, to see how the food supply chain has coped in the last couple of years has been close to a miracle. But it has its own issues about waste and sustainability, compounded by climate change effects on production right at the farm level. So I think you see net zero is really quite a profound disruption across manufacturing, and I think those companies, those locations that really embrace that and get there first will have a significant advantage. I touched a little bit on resilience. Most manufacturing companies don't know who their fourth-tier supplier is, but they found out if they're in Wuhan about 2 years ago, and they found out if they're in North Italy, and they're also finding out if they're in Ukraine now. And suddenly we all realize publicly, how much of the wheat comes from Ukraine, or how many electrical harnesses are made from Ukraine, or how important we are in different bits of the world. So I think looking at the resilience of global supply chains and being able to cope with those ongoing disruptions from geopolitics, extreme weather events and other things is a massive, massive challenge, I think. And trying to sort of conceive of an ecosystem or a supply chain approach that will enable that to be effective in the UK is going to be a significant contributor to our success. It's not going to get any easier, I don't think. As we go forward, we'll have to deal with these kind of repeated disruptions moving forward. Digitalization, I thought Tam touched on it really nicely, the impact of technology on all of our lives. Again, 15 years ago, not only we not made a Tesla, but we hadn't made an iPhone. Apple weren't even in the Fortune 100, and now they're just predominant everywhere. So that the rate of change that we've seen even in this 15 years, then fast forward to the next 15, tells I guess whether or not you believe that the pace of change will accelerate. There's been significant change already in our lifetimes. And the technology in manufacturing really does open up enormous opportunities for the things that I talked about: sustainable manufacturing, circular manufacturing, being much more efficient about the use of materials, making things last longer, finding ways of getting from A to B without polluting the environment and so on. You know, significant opportunities exist, and really embracing that technology is a massive part of that. In the UK, we have some real strengths, and we're delighted about those. But like in manufacturing, it's a globally competitive environment, and I like to see us embrace technological innovation, accelerate digitalization, and I'm delighted to say that the Made Smarter program can play a part in that. A little bit on the sort of systems approach. Personally, I'm a big fan of collaborative work. I'm a big fan of multidisciplinary work. It's pretty much designed into everything we do within the wider Made Smarter program. So our research centres outside of the InterAct one have a multidisciplinary approach. All of our collaborative programs are really designed around having manufacturers, technology companies, academics, investors, and so on. That sort of full range of people involved in it. And I think that's really how we need to try and take these things forward. It is quite complex to achieve all the things I'm talking about. You need a systems approach to try and do that. And undoubtedly, you need some great people. One of the best things about this job is the number of great people that I get to meet from all areas, all sciences, all social science disciplines, universities, academics, startups, and so on. If you saw all that, you'd be very confident that we can get there. You know, there really are some great people here, but equally, we need more. You know, it's no big mystery that we need more STEM graduates, need more people to come into manufacturing, I think. And creating that compelling vision that I know some of the people there, so Mike and the Storytelling Academy trying to create that compelling story for manufacturing and make sure we embrace diversity and talent wherever we can find it and draw it into the manufacturing sector will be hugely important. So I say I'm very optimistic about where we can get to, although I do have the moments where I think about that's the scale of that transformation that we need to deliver a net zero and resilient manufacturing sector is enormous. But if you just look back at the history and the rates of change we've seen, the world is changing much faster than you tend to perceive. You tend to sort of look ahead and think that it's overwhelming, and then look back. I just did my research on the way down the train this morning, look back to 2007. That was Blair transitioning to Brown. That was the global financial crisis. That was the launch of the iPhone. It was pre-Tesla and so on. You got to go through what was happening in 2007. Think how long ago that feels. And it's really not that long ago. But you think about the journey ahead and how we create a sort of positive journey for manufacturing going forward into that, say, that net zero, more resilient sector in the UK. Full of skills and talent and full of ideas and innovations that will affect all of our lives. So I'm hoping that this program, this conversation can play a part in bringing all that together. Thank you, Jen.